Hi everyone, welcome back to Awana and welcome back to Crazy Haired Anna. I'm so glad to have you guys with us right now watching this video. We are going to start things off as we usually do with a song, and this week I chose to start with Peace Like a River. And if you've been keeping track of which armor of God we're on, you may know why I chose to sing Peace Like a River, but we will talk about that later. So let's go enjoy this song.
I've got peace like a river. Peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got peace, love, and joy like a river. I've got peace, love, and joy like a river. I've got peace, love, and joy like a river in my soul. I've got peace, love, and joy like a river. I've got peace, love, and joy like a river. I've got peace, love, and joy like a river in my soul. I've got peace, love, and joy like an ocean. I've got peace, love, and joy like an ocean. I've got peace, love, and joy like an ocean in my soul. I've got peace, love, and joy like an ocean. I've got peace, love, and joy like an ocean. I've got peace, love, and joy like an ocean in my soul. I've got peace, love, joy like a fountain. I've got peace, love, and joy like a fountain. I've got peace, love, and joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got peace, love, and joy like a fountain. I've got peace, love, and joy like a fountain. I've got peace, love, and joy like a fountain in my soul.
Okay, now it's time for us to get into our Bible lesson and the next piece of the armor of God. And as always, I'm going to start off by reading about all the armor, which we find in Ephesians chapter 6. So you guys can follow along if you like. And hopefully this is starting to get stuck in your head because we've been reading it so many times. I know that I'm starting to memorize it just from reading it every week to you guys. Okay, so Ephesians chapter 6. Stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, which with you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Okay, so we have talked about the belt of truth. Last week we talked about the breastplate of righteousness. So that means this week we are on feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. Now, this one is, that sentence, that piece of armor is a lot longer than the rest of them. So we're going to make sure to break down all the pieces so that we can really understand what Paul was trying to teach us right here. So the first thing, we're going to talk about the gospel of peace. And I hope that you recognize both of those words, gospel and peace, because we've talked about them many, many times. So what is the gospel? We've talked about this before. Hopefully you remember the actual word gospel means good news. And now this isn't just like any good news. This isn't like, oh, your family is going to Disney World, because that's amazing news. It's not like, oh, your hockey team won the championship, or oh, you did a great job on your math test. It's not just any ordinary good news. The gospel is the amazing news that Jesus sent his son, or God sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for us in our place. And we've talked about this many, many times. And the reason that that is such amazing news is because of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, we can go and live with him in heaven forever. And he also comes into our life and he is with us here on earth until we get to heaven. So that's a reminder of what the gospel means, or good news. And then it says the good news of peace. So I hope that you recognize the word peace as well, because last year we were learning about the fruits of the Spirit, and one of the fruit of the Spirit is peace. So we talked about peace, and we talked about how peace comes from God. Only God can truly give us peace. And I think the best way to explain peace is from Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. So I'm going to read those now. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Okay, so peace clearly comes from God because it says the peace of God. And it says, which transcends all understanding. And that's kind of a big word, transcends. It just means that, like, it goes beyond anything we could ever understand. God's peace is unexplainable. It just doesn't make sense because sometimes bad things happen to us here in this world and we get anxious and we get worried about things. I'm sure all of us here have been anxious and worried. I definitely have. And God gives us peace in those moments of being anxious and worried. And it just doesn't make sense because we should be anxious and uptight and worried about it. But God's peace brings us just calmness, and it takes away our anxiety and our worry. And that's why it's just beyond explanation. It just doesn't make sense, because if you're in a situation where you should be nervous or worried and someone looks at you and says, like, why are you not nervous or worried? You can say, you know what? It doesn't make sense, but it's God's peace that he gave to me. So the gospel of peace, the gospel brings us peace as well, because even in everything that we're going on through this world, everything that we're going through, Jesus is with us through his gospel, and we have hope that we're going to go and be with him in heaven one day. Okay, so now we understand the gospel of peace a little bit better, hopefully. We're going to move on to the armor part of today's lesson. So it says, feet fitted with readiness. So what piece of armor do you think, or equipment, does it sound like Paul is talking about right here? Feet fitted with readiness. Well, I think he's talking about shoes, because what else do you put on your feet? And I mean, you put socks on your feet, but that's not really like strong armor. I don't think you could just run out into a fight with just socks on. That wouldn't be good. So he's talking about shoes here, and shoes are really important. But maybe you're thinking, well, Anna, yeah, shoes are important, but are they as important as like a shield or a helmet or a sword? Or we've talked about the breastplate. Are shoes really on the same level of importance as all of those other pieces of armor? Yes, definitely. Have you ever tried to do something with the wrong shoes on? It makes life so hard and complicated, and it hurts your feet so much. In the summer, a lot of the time, I don't wear shoes because I love to just run around on the grass or on the pavement. And one time, I was riding my bike and I didn't have shoes outside with me, so I just thought, oh, I'll just ride my bike without any shoes on. Have you guys ever tried to do that? The pedals are not comfortable. They were like sticking into the bottom of my feet, and it hurt so much because I wasn't wearing the proper shoes. I really should have been wearing running shoes. Or girls, have you ever tried to run in high heels? It's very difficult because high heels were not built to be for us to run in. That's not their purpose. Or have you guys ever gone somewhere and you're just wearing like sneakers or like slip-on shoes maybe, and then it snows a lot, and then you have to like walk back out to your car and you're just wearing sneakers and your feet get soaked? That happened to me one time. I came here to the church and there was like no snow on the ground, and I was just wearing some like slip-on shoes with some socks. And then by the time I left the church, there had been a blizzard that day. So there was like this much snow on the ground. It like came up to almost my knee, and I was only wearing these slip-on shoes, and my feet got so wet, and my shoes kind of got ruined a little bit too because they weren't built for snow or water. So see, shoes are so important, and that's what Paul is trying to remind us here. Shoes are so important, so the gospel of peace is also so important because he's comparing these two things. The gospel is so important. In fact, it's the most important decision that you could ever make. And every single one of us has to make the decision. Everyone watching, you have to make a decision. I've had to make a decision. Your parents, teachers, everyone on the earth has to decide whether they're going to accept the gospel or they're going to reject it. And if you think, well, I'm not going to reject it, but I'm also not going to accept it. It doesn't work that way. You either accept it, and if you don't, then you've automatically rejected it. And it is the most important decision that you could ever make. And it was a decision that I made when I was only 4 years old. I decided to accept Jesus' gift of salvation, and it was the best thing I have ever done in my entire life. So Paul is telling us here that putting these shoes of the gospel of peace on is so important, and it's a decision that we all have to make. But there's another part of this piece of armor as well. It says, with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. So why do you think that word readiness is in there? Like, they could have just said your feet fitted with the gospel of peace. But Paul wrote feet fitted with the readiness that comes with the gospel of peace. So what do you guys think we need to be ready for? It sounds to me like we need to go out and do something with the gospel of peace that we have. And in Mark chapter 16, verse 15, which, Sparkies, this is a verse that you have to memorize in your Wing Runner book, I'm pretty sure. Becky and I memorized it a little while ago, so you will recognize this verse. It says, he said to them, go out into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. So Jesus is saying here, you need to go out into the world and tell them of this good news that you've received. And I don't know about you, but when you're going out to do something, I think shoes are pretty important. Remember, I said, depending on what you're doing, the right shoe can make or break what you're doing. It's going to be really important what type of shoe you're wearing. And so when we accept the gospel into our life and we feel at peace, we don't just keep it bundled up to ourselves. We want to go and tell everybody about it because it's the good news. You always want to tell people about good news. Like, if you get a good mark on your test, you want to go home and you want to tell your family about it, you want to tell your friends, or if you've found exciting news out that you're going on vacation, you go and you tell all your friends about it. You don't keep it bottled up inside because that's not how it works. When we have exciting things to say, we want to share it with people. And so we need to go and share the gospel of peace with others so that they can also feel at peace and make that most important decision that they could ever make. And so this is what our feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace is all about. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that that is another piece of armor that you can put on. So we've done 3 pieces of armor so far. We have the belt of truth, because we know that knowing the truth is so important, and God is truth, so his word is truth. And we've had the breastplate of righteousness, because doing what is right guards our heart against the devil and his schemes. And now we have our feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. And we are putting our shoes on, ready to go out and tell people about the good news that we know about. So that is our Armor of God lesson for today. Keep up the amazing work of memorizing your verses. We are about halfway through Awana for this year, so keep going. You guys are doing a great job. I know sometimes it is hard. Sometimes it's hard for Becky and I too, but make sure to keep memorizing your verses and going through your books, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday nights over Zoom, and we will see you guys soon. Bye.
Alright, you guys ready? Here we go.